Hello and welcome to the 5th series of Forthright,
the podcast with, for and by women writers.
If you enjoy the show, please give us a follow and a review wherever you listen to your podcasts.
We've got some fantastic writers for you coming up. We hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to Forthright. I'm Anna.
And I'm Sam, and today we're very happy to have Frances Quinn with us. Hi, Frances.
Hello.
So, Frances is the author of historical novels The Smallest Man, That Bonesetter Woman and The Lost Passenger. She grew up in Forest Gate, East London, and studied English at King's College, Cambridge, then became a journalist and copywriter. She lives in Hove with her husband and 3 very spoiled Tonkinese cats.
And today, Frances is going to be reading from The Lost Passenger, so I'm just going to read the blurb. In the chaos of that terrible night, her secret went down with the Titanic, but secrets have a way of floating to the surface. Trapped in an unhappy aristocratic marriage, Eleanor Coombs sees only lonely days ahead of her. So a present from her father, tickets for the maiden voyage of a huge, luxurious new ship called the Titanic, offers a welcome escape from the cold, controlling atmosphere of her husband's ancestral home and some precious time with her little boy, Teddy. When the ship goes down, Eleanor realises the disaster has given her a chance to take Teddy and start a new life, but only if they can disappear completely, listed among the dead. Penniless and using another woman's name, she has to learn to survive in a world that couldn't be more different from her own and keep their secret safe. An uplifting story about grabbing your chances with both hands and being brave enough to find out who you really are. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so over to you, Frances, and if you'd be happy to put a bit of context in terms of which part of your novel you're reading.
Okay, so this is quite early on. This is actually Eleanor's wedding day. She's been swept off her feet by Frederick, who's the son of the Earl of Staunton. She believes he's in love with her. And so it's the wedding. The house is full of aristocratic guests who she hardly knows anyone. They're all milling about drinking champagne. She realises she needs a wee. So she's gone upstairs to the bathroom, and think Downton Abbey. It's a huge house and very posh. And, you know, she's had to get a maid to show her where the bathroom is because although she's come to live here, that she's never even been upstairs. So here we go. I shut the bathroom door and leaned against it, suddenly grateful for a moment to myself, looked down at the shiny gold ring on my finger and thought of my mam. She used to love telling me about her own wedding day, long before my father made his fortune, so no satin dress, no champagne. They wore their Sunday best and celebrated at the pub with brown ale and ham sandwiches. Yours will be different, she used to say. She couldn't have guessed how different. But just make sure you love him and he loves you. That's the important bit. Just then I heard voices from the room next door. Well, you got there in the end, said a woman. Where did I know that voice from? The one that answered was Frederick's mother, my mother-in-law. In the end, but by God, he's not an easy man. The other woman laughed. Let's hope it's not in the blood. Even then, I didn't fall in. Not until my mother-in-law said, she's been rather indulged at home. Encouraged to think herself clever, unfortunately. It's made her dreadfully bold in her manner and the way she speaks. But she's only 19, easy to mould. The father, though, appalling man. Couldn't back out, of course, once it was announced, but he haggled all the details. The other woman smiled. I imagine that's how he clawed his way up in the first place. But you're pleased with the outcome? It's what we needed. With the taxes this wretched government is threatening, said Lady Staunton. And we couldn't have done it without you. No one else would invite the man anywhere, and we couldn't get her without him. For a second, I couldn't breathe, because now I knew who the other woman was. As I walked downstairs, stepping carefully to keep from tripping on my train, I kept thinking, surely I didn't hear right. The woman on the other side of the wall was Lady Burnham, who'd invited us, out of the blue, to the ball, where Frederick happened to walk by and stop to talk, not knowing who I was, not even recognising our surname, until I introduced my father to him. So Lady Staunton had asked for us to be invited, so Frederick and I would meet. They'd picked us, me, out, when the only thing they could know about me was that my father was rich. So all along, Frederick knew exactly who I was. He'd made it seem that he met me by chance that night and then fallen in love with me. But the first part wasn't true. So was the rest a lie too? Because it sounded like they'd decided Frederick would marry me before he'd even met me. It sounded like he'd have married me whether he liked me or not, let alone love me, as long as the price was right.
Oh, Frances, fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant hearing it in your voice as well. There's something really magical about a hit when, novelists are reading their work aloud. I think The Lost Passenger is just such a brilliant, brilliant novel. And
Thank you.
Just wondered, where did the idea come from? How did you come across this brilliant story?
So the idea came from, I didn't get an American deal for my first 2 books, and I really, really wanted one. And I thought, what period or historical event can I hang this book on that everybody knows that Americans will be interested in? And it came to me, the Titanic. Everybody knows about the Titanic. And I was thinking, what can I do with that story? And I read something about 9/11, and it was talking about the fact that nobody knew exactly, still don't know, who was killed in 9/11, because there might have been people who were where they shouldn't be. There were people who should have been there but weren't. And in all the chaos, nobody knew for sure. And I thought, well, that must be what it was like with the Titanic. This terrible chaos, no one would know. And if you wanted to disappear, that would be a really good chance to do it. And I sort of worked backwards from there. I thought I wanted her to be a woman character. Who is this woman? What's she escaping from? And then where can I send her that would be completely different from where she's started, and really difficult for her? What will sort of put her in jeopardy? And there would be the danger of someone finding out a secret. So I kind of built it from there, really.
It's just such a compelling story. And how much did you know about the Titanic before you started to write it?
Very little. I wasn't one of those. I wasn't a Titanorack, of which I now know there are many.
I've never heard that phrase before.
No, that's brilliant.
I have quite a lot. I wasn't, I had a vague interest. I think I remember it being on Blue Peter when I was a kid. I'd never even seen the movie. I didn't watch the movie until I'd written the first draft, because I thought I'd better, make sure I don't copy anything. It was literally just, this is something everybody knows about. And then I did become very interested when I was researching it. And it was, I think we sort of forget that, it's become part of popular culture. You've got the jokes about moving the deck chairs on the Titanic and Celine Dion singing that song, and every cruise passenger reenacts that scene at the front of the ship. But, we do sort of, it is we laugh at it, but actually when I was researching, it was horrendously sad. Just, so not just so many people died, but the so-called lucky ones who made it to the lifeboats had to sit there and watch and listen to all the people in the water who were never going to be rescued. And most of them, they never got over it. I mean, they didn't know about PTSD then, of course, but that's what a lot of them had. There was one little boy, he was 7 at the time, so he really didn't know what was going on. But when he went back home to Detroit, he lived next door to a baseball ground, and the roar of the crowd on a Saturday reminded him of the sound of the people in the water, and his dad used to take him out every Saturday so he didn't have to hear it.
Oh, God. That's heartbreaking.
It really was. I mean, I was a journalist. I'm quite a tough nut. I've done all the triumph over tragedy stories, but it was really quite traumatic reading those survivor stories.
And you've got your other books as well, Bonesetter Woman and The Smallest Man, were based on real life characters.
This one wasn't. Eleanor is completely fictitious.
Okay, and then so how did you find those other characters?
So I found The Smallest Man. I was the second novel I tried to write was a murder mystery set at the time of the Great Plague. And I thought it would be good to have a character with a disability, because I thought, particularly at that time, they'll bring a different perspective to things. And I was literally Googling, I think, one afternoon, 17th century plus disability. And somehow I came upon the Wikipedia entry for Geoffrey Hudson, who was the inspiration for Nat Davey, the smallest man. And as I read through his story, I thought, how has nobody turned this into a novel? He had the most amazing life. He was, sold at the age of 10. He was given as a present to the Queen. He was by her side throughout the Civil War. He managed to be captured not once but twice by pirates. And I just thought, wow. how has nobody done this?
No, because you couldn't make it up, could you?
No, you couldn't make it up. But that's the trouble. That's what I discovered, that actually, while basing things on a real life character has a lot of advantages, it's also, you discover that actually real life doesn't have the right shape for a novel. So that was why I decided not to dramatise Jeffrey Hudson's story, but to create a fictitious counterpart, because then I had more freedom to write a story that would be the right shape.
Yeah, because I imagine it can be quite prohibiting to write something. Yes, if you're trying to write something that's a true account of a real life person.
Yeah, because, the fact that he did get captured twice by pirates, well, that's just, in a book, that would just be stupid.
Once he's careless.
Exactly. And in fact, I did end up, so Jeffrey Hudson was, as I said, captured twice by pirates. The second time, he was taken to North Africa and he was kept as a slave. And I did originally have that. When the book sold, the last third was about him going to Africa, and he went into the Sultan's harem and various things happened, exciting things, I thought. And then my editorial notes arrived and my editor said, I've got a few small things and one big thing. And the big thing was get rid of the whole North Africa section, write a different last third to the book. Because as she pointed out, we got 2/3 of the way through the book, and because it's written in first person, when he goes off to North Africa, everyone else disappears. And the story starts again with new characters, which I now know is not a good idea, but I didn't know it then.
That must have been a bit disheartening, though, when you realise that a third of your book has to be rewritten.
Well, it was hideous because I hadn't even researched that part of the Civil War, but I knew, because he didn't need to know, he was going to be in North Africa. But I did know it was really quite boring. Basically, by then the king had got captured and he just gets passed backwards and forwards, and there were lots of meetings and conferences and discussions, and I thought, what the hell am I going to do with this? And I really did think, so I was actually away for a writing weekend with some friends when my editorial notes arrived. And, first time you have no idea what to expect. And I said to my friends, I'm not going to read them now because I won't sleep tonight. I'll read them in the morning. And of course, curiosity got the better of me, and about midnight I did open the email.
Oh no.
And I can remember lying there in the early hours and thinking, I can't do this. This is my dream come true, but I can't do what she's asking me to do. I'm going to have to give the money back, give the contract back, and, it's all over. And in the morning, I sort of went into breakfast like a woman going to the gallows. And my 2 writing buddies said, what is the matter? And I told them. And they said, right, we're just going to sit down and brainstorm, and we're going to find you a different ending to the book, which we did. And it has taught me that you can rewrite anything. You can do any story in a different way, which has turned out to be quite a handy thing to know.
Are you still part of a writing group now, or the 2 women that you were with? Do you still kind of share it?
We're still. Yeah, so one of them is Lucy Barker, who wrote The Other Side of Mrs. Wood. So she's done really well, and my other friend, Kate Clark, is working on books as well. So yeah, we still share work, and we still go away for writing retreats.
But it sounds like you got the news in the right place, though.
Yes, exactly.
So you were saying that just then that you didn't know anything about the Civil War, you hadn't researched that bit. How does it work in your process? Do you have to do a lot of research before you start the story, or is it you? I
try not to do too much, because what I discovered with The Smallest Man, which took me a really long time to write, is you could very easily write yourself out of the story. So if I had realised that I wasn't going to be able to do the North Africa bit, I would have looked at the last bit of the Civil War and gone, well, that's not going to work, so this story's not going to work. But once you're in it, if you stumble across factual problems, you find ways around them. Whereas you could very easily sort of, look at the story and go, oh, no, that doesn't work because it's not dramatic enough. Or, for example, Jeffrey Hudson had a sad ending. And spoiler alert, Nat Davey does not have a sad ending. The real life counterpart of Endurance Proudfoot in that Bonesetter woman had a very sad ending, but she doesn't. I don't like sad endings. So you could very easily, if you do too much research and it's a real life story, you can just end up scrapping it. So I find it's better to do just enough that I can create the world, and then I sort of do it as I go. So I'm quite often writing, in the margins, did they have pockets in their trousers at this point? And then I'll go back and check later on.
I think you write really compelling characters as well. So like the Bonesetter woman, I loved that book. So it was one I sat down to read it of an afternoon, and then basically just didn't stop until I'd finished reading it. It ended up being like a really late night. I mean, just like, just one more chapter. And I think it's just the connection that you create for a reader with your characters. I know that we said that with the Bonesetter woman and the Smallest Man that they're based on real life characters, but they're characters within their own right, within that you've created. How do you do that, and how do you make them feel so kind of real and connectable?
I think it comes sort of over time. My first drafts are terrible. My characters are really shallow. They're real to me, but what's in my head is often not on the page. So I think it takes a few drafts. I think it's a bit like getting to know people in real life. You just have to spend time with them, and then over time they begin to come. But also, I think what I try and do is I either write first person or I write very, very close third. So you're always in someone's head. And I think that helps the reader connect with the character. I'm kind of breaking the fourth wall quite often. I'm sometimes talking directly to the reader. And I think all those things make it easier to empathise. And I always have the rule. I knew with The Smallest Man, if in the first 2 or 3 pages you didn't kind of fall in love with Nat Davey, you wouldn't like the book. And so I always try now in the first 2 or 3 pages, I want the reader to be rooting for this character. And then once you've got that, you can do anything really. Because, I've got some things in my books that I thought, no one's going to believe this. There's a bit where Nat is smuggled into a house in a potato sack. And all the way while I was writing, I think no one's going to believe this. But once they're rooting for a character, they will kind of forgive you things that might be slightly implausible because they want to turn the page. And I was always, when I was writing The Smallest Man, I felt like I'd done the Curtis Brown course and they talked about the shape that a novel should have. The ones that you get in all those books about writing. And I kept thinking, it's not got that shape. I haven't got, this one question that should be asked all the way through the story. And I remember saying to my husband once, this is not working because I haven't got this question that everyone says you should have. And he said, well, the question is what happens to him next. And I thought, yeah, it is. Once you connect with the character, they just take you through, and you keep turning the pages to see what happens to them next.
And do you miss them when you've finished spending time with them?
By the time I've done probably 3 drafts, and my drafts are, they're complete rewrites really. If from what I send to my editor to what eventually gets published, if 30% of the words are the same, it's a miracle. So by that stage, I just want to see the back of them, to be honest. But then after that, once I've got over the trauma, then yeah, and I am really fond. I'm fond of all of them, and they are sort of real to me, really.
Yeah.
Can you confirm or deny a rumour that we have heard about The Smallest Man, which is that you are a huge Abba fan and
True.
that you hid some of the Abba song titles in The Smallest Man? Is this true?
I've hidden Abba song titles in all my books.
Oh, how brilliant! And do your readers know this? And have they been discovered?
No one's ever found them because some of them are a little bit obscure. But with The Smallest Man, so I hid 3 deliberately. And then when I was reading the proofs, I thought, I'll just better check that, because things go in and out. I thought, I better check I've still got those 3 Abba songs in there. So I did it by searching, and I discovered I actually had 6.
Oh, fantastic.
So my subconscious mind had put 3 more in. But the others, that Bonesetter woman, I think, has 3, and the Lost Passenger has 3, and I'm just working on my 4th book, and I've just finished the first draft, and that has 3, possibly with 1. And sometimes there are bonus ones. So the new one has 3 Abba songs and 1 Agneta Folkskog song, solo song. And I think that Bonesetter woman has a song from Chess, which was written by Benny and Bjorn from Abba.
This makes me so happy. I think this is like the greatest discovery ever.
And it's the most fun thing of writing the whole book.
It's making
to hide the other songs.
We're definitely going to have to look out for those.
See if you can find them. No one has ever found all 3 of them in any book yet. You need to arm yourself with the Wikipedia list of ABBA songs, and then you might have a chance.
I think there's probably some of them that I'm not that familiar with.
Some of them are album tracks that you've probably never heard.
So this is quite a kind of a niche thing, isn't it? It's for readers who are both fans of historical fiction and ABBA.
And ABBA, yeah. I don't know what the middle of that Venn diagram is like. It might not be very fat.
Yeah. So what are you working? You just said about book 4. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, it's about lady footballers in Victorian London.
Fabulous.
So this one, I've gone back to basing it on a real character. At the moment, it's a lady called Nettie Honeyball, and at the moment I am calling her Nettie Honeyball, but because I've strayed quite far from the real story, I think I will probably make her a fictional counterpart eventually. But she was the woman who started the first ladies football club. And as you can imagine, there was quite a lot of opposition. The medical profession were furious and said, women shouldn't be running around on a football field because their wombs would drop out. And the church said it was immoral. And so they were quite controversial. But Nettie Honeyball, it's known that, thought that wasn't her real name, but nobody knows who she really was. So in my story, I have given her a backstory which explains why she's using a pseudonym.
I mean, it is a great name. It's a shame if you can't use it.
It is a great name, but it's sort of a little bit of a comic name. So after a while, I was thinking, is this just going to be too much of a distraction? So she may get a new name in the final version. And also what I discovered was, and this is a reason why it's quite a good idea to plan your story if you're going to base it on a real one. They were the first ladies football club in England. And I had this idea that it would be like, a typical sports story where the underdogs, they build up to the big grudge match and then they win. But they were the first ladies football club. Who did they play against? No one. They used to just divide into teams and play exhibition matches, which doesn't really give you much of a dramatic trajectory. So I have invented a local men's team who take against them, and they eventually end up playing them.
Oh, I love this story already.
The men sabotage them. The men are furious that they become quite popular, and they sabotage them, and they have to get revenge.
So has this book got a home when you've finished it? Is it already got a publisher?
It has, yeah. So this will be out in March. This is the second book in my second contract with Simon & Schuster. So yeah, that will be out. So it's just the first draft has just gone to my editor. So it will come hurtling back to me soon and probably need a ton of work, but it does at least have a home to go to, which I think, although you have the pressure of a deadline in that circumstance, I find it much easier than just sort of writing on spec.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's otherwise you are kind of writing into the abyss, aren't you, a little bit, and then
and you're thinking, am I wasting my time? Is this ever going to go anywhere? I mean, I wrote 2 books before I did The Smallest Man, and they're in a drawer and they'll probably never see the light of day, and I don't really want to ever have to do that again.
Because was it The Smallest Man that was published during the pandemic?
Yeah, so it was published, it was going to be published, I think, in March 2020, and then we moved it to try and avoid lockdown to October, and then there was another lockdown, and we moved it to 2021, and it caught the third lockdown.
Oh,
because...
So I've never actually seen the hardback in a shop.
I know that you're very active in a group of other writers as well who had a similar experience with the D20s.
I mean,
could you explain a bit about that?
Yeah, so there are usually Facebook groups for any sort of debut year where, you know, anyone who's got their first book coming out that year joins the Facebook group, but they tend to be just that. You know, people might post questions and ask for advice, but they pretty soon fizzle out. But because, you know, we were debuts in the plague year, we started having Zooms on a Friday because no one could go out. And so we had these Zooms. And I think because of that, we bonded in a way that we wouldn't have done otherwise. So there's probably a core of about 15 to 20 of us now who still, you know, we still Zoom now and then. We've met in real life. When the pandemic was finally over and a group of us met in real life, it was so weird. It was like seeing people off the telly because we'd only ever seen each other on a screen. But they're so, even now, so supportive. I mean, it's become sort of a lot of little subgroups, obviously, because people tie up with people who are in their genre or live local to them. But there's still probably 8 to 10 people who I could go to for anything. You know, if I want a sudden plot clinic or this has happened, is it normal? They're still there. And I think, you know, it was a weird thing being publishing the pandemic and probably not what you'd wish for, but that has been a lovely thing that came out of it. Because it's a lonely business. You know, you're spending all your time with imaginary people for a start, and then you spend so much of your time waiting for your agent, waiting for your editor, in fear and trepidation of reviews. You're basically signing up to be a teenager in love for the rest of your life. And it's quite nice to have other people who are in the same position.
And so, saying that you know the writing life can be quite solitary. What's your kind of writing routine like? What's your day to day?
So I still have a sort of day job. So I work for the Waitrose Weekend newspaper. So I write for that every week, and I also do copywriting. So if you've got a Waitrose pizza in your fridge, the words on the front of it probably came from me. So it's a case of you've read the book, now eat your pizza. So that takes up, you know, a fair amount of my time. When I have just a writing day, I'm at the desk. Basically, I work office hours. More than that, if I'm on a deadline. If I'm close to the deadline for a draft or for edits, then I'm working 7 days a week. But I try not to do that all the time because I think, you know, it's horrible. Yeah. So mainly I'm working Monday to Friday. I'm lucky enough to have an office at home, and I'll be in there probably with 3 cats on the desk, getting in the way. And for me, just bum on seat is the key. You know, I've had days when I might write a paragraph and I know I'm just going to delete that paragraph the next day. But if I don't do that, whatever it is that's blocking up my head will never get unblocked. And that is also a tip I took from Benny Anderson of Abba, he still, since Abba finished, he still goes Monday to Friday to his studio, 9 to 5, makes music, and some days nothing good comes, but he says it's like waiting for a dragon to come out of a cave. If you don't you'll have days when you sit outside the cave and you don't see the dragon. But if you're not sitting outside the cave, you will never see the dragon. And that's also my approach to writing. You've got to be at the desk in case something comes.
And I also love that Abba is... we managed to talk about Abba again as well, which is fantastic.
I also dedicated The Smallest Man to Abba.
This, honestly, I can't tell you how much joy this brings me. It's so brilliant. Finally then, for our listeners who are new to writing or thinking about writing a novel or any kind of writing really creatively, what kind of advice would you have for them?
One thing would be definitely bum on seat. Don't wait for the muse to strike because she might never strike. So you have to try and get regular hours and just write. Even if it's difficult, just keep going. And also don't chase the next bestseller because the chances are you're not going to write the next bestseller and you're better to just write something. And then the other thing I would say is I'm a very moany, whingy writer. I find it really difficult. You know, I don't sit down and the words pour out of me. But what I've learned is it being difficult doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. And in fact, it being very easy can mean you're doing it wrong. So, if you're struggling, just don't worry. It's not that you can't write. It's just that writing is really quite difficult.
Great advice. Absolutely brilliant advice. Thank you.
So,
You're welcome.
For people who want to hear more from you, are you on the social media?
I am, yes, I'm FranQuinn21 on Instagram, at FranQuinn on Twitter, and Frances Quinn Author on Facebook.
Fantastic. And we very much look forward to reading your fourth book when it's out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fran. Thanks for spending some time with us.
No problem.
Thank you for listening.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your writer friends about us.